worth individuals and their professional teams shouldn't struggle to find great options for deferring capital gains taxes. Don't let your failure to plan become your plan to fail, especially when the deferred sales trust may be one of the best ways for you to exit your highly appreciated assets and defer those capital gains taxes so you can continue to grow your wealth. You are not in the wrong place. I am your host today. I'm Jessica Lanning. I'm filling in for Brett Swarts. Each episode, we are joined by some of the leading wealth advisors, business and real estate experts, and leadership specialists to share ideas, have people tell their deal stories, and share their inspiration so together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. Our next guest is a healthcare professional, a real estate investor, a business owner, and on top of it all, a spouse and a parent who understands how busy life can be and how easy it is to let tasks pile up. After struggling herself to keep up with all the moving parts, she hired a virtual assistant. And after that life-changing experience, she now helps other real estate investors and business professionals do the same. Please welcome Valerie Shirah to the podcast. Welcome, Valerie. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, Jessica. It's great to be here today.
So please tell us a little bit more about you and your story and your current focus so that our listeners can get to know you better.
Sure. So I'm from Ohio, originally from Ohio. My husband's from Alabama. Long story short, met on a missions trip. We ended up getting married. We lived in Ohio, and he was a heavy equipment operator. And you have the traditional life, you're going to save up, someday retire. Don't really think too much about it. I would say just the normal life. We were into Dave Ramsey, listening, saving, all that fun stuff. And when it was about 4 years ago, he's 35 years old, we started noticing he had a tremor in his right arm, and we couldn't figure out what was going on. We ended up, after a few months of it was getting worse, going to a couple specialists, neurologist, and found out that he actually had Parkinson's disease at 35 years old. And so it was definitely a wake-up call. It just kind of shook us awake, and it was just like we suddenly realized that dream, American dream, the whole life that we've been planning was not going to work. It was not going to work the way we had planned, because being a heavy equipment operator, you need both arms. That's your livelihood. So through that, we ended up looking at real estate. We'd heard a lot about it. I'd been listening to Bigger Pockets and all that kind of stuff, but we didn't really do anything until that point. So that was definitely something that changed our mindset as far as just relying on your W-2 and, just planning to retire someday on however that happens through your employer. And we kind of started taking things into our own hands. And that's where we started looking at how can we take control of our income through real estate or through building businesses? How can we keep that income through tax strategies and through just investments and reinvesting it, saving, all different things. We just started looking at it as, okay, we have to take control of this. And so fast forward a few years, we do real estate. We own a virtual assistance agency, and we're currently now looking to acquire some more businesses and continue investing in real estate. So that's kind of the big scoop in a short little summary.
So our listeners can get to know you a little bit better too. We believe here at the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast that everybody comes to the planet with a special gift, a superpower, so to speak, to help other people on the planet. What's yours?
Okay, so mine, it's funny. You say they're born with it. And I would definitely say, going way back to a child, I've always been able to find a who, whether that's a sibling to help with your tasks, to help you with your jobs, to collaborate and kind of work on projects together, to all the way up through now using virtual assistants. That's kind of what I consider my superpower, being able to find that who can either help you as maybe it's a mentor, maybe it's somebody that is going to help show you the way, or maybe it's an assistant who's going to be able to take those tasks that are kind of bogging you down so you can't grow. So if I had a superpower, I would say it's the ability to help, find a who.
Find a who. I love that. So our topic for today's show is empowering your life with a virtual assistant or virtual assistants. I want you to talk a little bit about how you help people find a virtual assistant and what their biggest hang up is in hiring a virtual assistant.
Sure. So the way that we help is we basically, if somebody comes to me and they're like, Valerie, I need help, I need a virtual assistant, I sit down with them and I say, okay, what are your goals? Because we need to know where you want to be in order to know who you need to get you there or to help you. So we go over, what your goals are, maybe some of the tasks that you want to get off of your plate. And I'll be honest, a lot of people aren't sure. They know that they need help, but they may not know the specifics of what is the best area to outsource, or, maybe even they may have an idea on different things, but they're in complete different buckets. And so we help them kind of look at those skills and say, okay, hey, you need help in underwriting and you may need a graphic designer, but those two are not going to be the same person. So we really sit down with each potential client and go over that and figure out what type of assistant they need. And then when we're done with that, we go and find that person. And, we kind of help them get started. We help train, the virtual assistant. We help train the client too, because it's a huge mindset shift from I'm going to do everything to I'm going to have someone take this off my plate. So that's kind of what we specialize in with our agency.
And what do you think the pain point is that finally makes somebody get you to call, get somebody else to call you and say, hey, I need some help here? What's their pain point?
You know, honestly, it's typically they've been in pain for probably 6 months, and it's
Or
just they
longer.
can't take, yeah, or longer. And they just can't take it any longer, or they're dropping the balls and on different projects, and maybe they just drop something a little bigger than they wanted to, and it's like, okay, I've got to take this seriously. I need help. For me, when we got our first virtual assistant, we were getting into real estate and we had some short-term, they're kind of like midterm rentals with the traveling nurse, medical student type housing. And at the time I was homeschooling. So I've got my kids at home, 3 kids, and then we're doing short-term rentals, purchasing properties. And my husband's still he's working full-time, trying to maximize the time he has left with the company. And it was too much. It just got to the point where I told my husband, I said, Jonathan, I can't do it. I'm so stressed out. I'm so overwhelmed. Something has got to give. But for us, we didn't have the option of backing out and just saying, forget it. We had to make it work because every year the tremor got worse. And, it's been 4 years, and this year is the first year that he's actually done. He can't go back. But we've been able to completely replace his income and then some through real estate and through businesses. And we just hit that point where we knew we couldn't take it any further, but giving up wasn't an option. And so that's typically the pain point that we see with people coming in, is just they're overwhelmed, and it's a lot of different areas, and they're just not quite sure maybe what to do with it or how to offload it, maybe piece by piece.
And I have to imagine too that there's got to be a pushback on the money thing. Oh, I'm going to hire somebody. I'm going to pay them to do this. I can do it myself. How do you get them over that hump?
That is definitely a mindset shift that has to happen. And it's not easy. Even growing up, my dad does construction. And a lot of times we grew up, let's do this ourselves to save money. And you can do that in all the areas, but then, you're talking about, you're going to paint, you're going to lay the block yourself. You're going to put up the foundation yourself. Every aspect, you can only build one house a year if you're going to do every little bit of it. So the amount that you're able to do is just less. But if you look at it, when outsourcing or handing off tasks, you do have a decrease in your distribution or in your income, but it's temporary. Once that person gets a hold of what you're wanting them to do and is able to actually take those tasks off you, they should always make you money. Somebody, if you're hiring and that person just cost you, then there's something wrong with the position you're trying to outsource, or maybe the value of that position. Maybe that position needs eliminated. If you're looking at tasks that don't help you generate money, something's wrong. And so when we have clients that we're looking at and they're a little bit apprehensive about that, you have to look at the tasks. Are these really important tasks that are just time consuming for you? Maybe it's social media. Maybe you're not getting leads from the stuff you're doing. So we need to look at that, make that more effective. So it's worth the money, because every person you hire should, in essence, make the business money and make you money. Or if nothing else, for me, sometimes I have my VA do things that just improve the quality of my life, and it's worth every penny. So there's that too.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest thing to put a price tag on. Getting
Sure.
your Saturday back, getting more time with your kids. Um, and also, as entrepreneurs, because I know you're working with real estate investors and business owners, protecting your confidence as an entrepreneur is so important. And when
Sure.
you're buried in those weeds of tasks that you shouldn't be doing, it's really difficult, I think, to maintain your confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, do you have stories? Tell me a story about a client that just had a phenomenal result.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we have different clients. One of them that's working with us right now to get their second virtual assistant. They got their first, I think about a year ago, and she's just done phenomenal with them. They've been able to implement her into, I think they have her working with like the property management side, talking to guests, talking to, you know, different, if they're putting listings out there, she's responding to the responses to those listings, helping with their management software. And they've done well. And when you get a virtual assistant and you implement them into your business, a lot of times what we're seeing is that virtual assistant growing with the business, and then the ability to stick more in under them in the future. So it's not like, we don't really do the task outsourcing. Like that's like Fervor or different places where you can just hire a task out. We actually implement somebody into your business. They're an extension of you, an extension of your business. And so, yeah, that's one of the ones that we're excited about, because we're seeing that growth and more departments hiring out and stuff like that. So that's really exciting to see.
And are you taking the responsibility of hiring off the plate as well? Like, are you handling the W-2s and taxes and all that kind of stuff? Or is that something that your clients are taking care of?
That's something we take care of. If you hire a virtual assistant through like an agency like ours, you don't have the 1099s, the W-2s, you're not messing with that payroll. And that's huge. I mean, that alone can be time consuming and it can be expensive, if you're adding someone to payroll. So just with us, it's a business expense. And so it's so clean and easy just to mark it as an expense and not have to worry about all of those other side things that just you might not think about when you're hiring, either through payroll or even, 1099.
And talk to me a little bit about how you're finding people. It seems finding virtual assistants. It seems like with COVID and everybody connected to the internet, like everybody, seems to be putting themselves out there as a virtual assistant. What attracts virtual assistants to you? And what do you do to go out and find them?
Sure. So we do a couple things. When we need a virtual assistant, we by the point that we decide we need somebody, we know exactly what we're looking for. And that narrows it down a lot. We're not just shotgun firing out there, seeing what we can hit. We know we're looking for a specific person. So the first thing we do is we tell our virtual assistants. And as we grow, this is becoming more and more powerful because we want them to refer someone that they know and that they have confidence in, because that makes it so much easier. I mean, if you love your job, you're not going to refer somebody that's going to make you look bad. So that's our number one thing we really like to do, is to get referrals from our other VAs. And then the second, we're putting ads out there all the time. And we've built a pretty awesome system of multiple interviews. They have to get through our VAs before they even get to us. We have multiple layers that they kind of work through. And that has, in the beginning, it was just me, at home looking for my own VA. I'd put an ad out, have like 100 responses. And it was like, oh my word, now what do I do? Reading through the resumes, I would pick some that look interesting. I'd email them back and never hear a word. Maybe they found another job, maybe this. And so it was just so time consuming. But with what we're doing and doing it for multiple people, we're able to scale that and make it sustainable and be able to have different layers of communicating. Are they responding back quickly, or do you hear from them and then you don't hear for 3 more weeks and then they randomly message you back? We're able to monitor all that on a larger scale than an individual just kind of looking for somebody. So that's some of the stuff. We have different tests that we put them through, depending on what you need. If you need somebody who's really good at bookkeeping, I'm not going to worry as much about their spoken English, how well it is. But if you're looking for a cold caller, we're going to prioritize that English. If you're wanting somebody to do writing for you, we're going to do some maybe English tests and see how well their written English is. So it really depends on what the person is looking for on, the specific process that we'll put that VA through.
And talk to me about the expectations that you set for your clients about getting a virtual assistant, the transition period, the training. What are you preparing them to experience when they hire you?
Well, I say the first month or two can be hard. Some people, depending on what you're having them do, I always preface it with that because some things are a lot easier than others. Some require a lot more training, but typically it gets harder before it gets better. And that's just because you have to take the time to show them exactly what you're looking for, what you want, gives them time to get to know your business, the big picture. And then the other thing I like to really tell them is, in order to make this successful, they have to have feedback from you. And that sounds like a no-brainer, but you would be shocked at how many people do not give their VA feedback. They just say, I didn't like it. I don't like that. It's like, well, does the VA know that you didn't like that? Well, no. Who would like it? It's like, well, they have to hear that. If it's graphics, tell them. It's more hurtful to the VA that you don't tell them than if you would just be honest and say, look, this isn't my style. I don't like the red. I don't like the shapes, and go through that with them. And then also what's really helpful is show them what you do like. They're shooting in the dark for so many different clients, who have come from, trying to get a VA on their own and haven't had success. And so sometimes that's the training that we actually have to do with the client, because there's a reason it wasn't successful. And many times it can be the VA, but many times it's actually the client not communicating and providing that feedback so that the VA can be successful and that they can really do a good job and be real specific to whatever the client is looking for. So that's definitely something that we see a lot of.
I know a lot of our listeners are real estate investors as well. And I would love to get a list of tasks that virtual assistants are doing for real estate investors. What are they doing for them?
Oh man. Okay. So it goes all the way from the beginning. If you're looking for properties, I've had my VAs scour online MLS listings. If you're doing multifamily, that initial contacting with brokers, helping that form that relationship, looking for wholesalers, Facebook groups, all that kind of stuff. If you're smaller or like wholesaling, we've had them entering properties into Podio and providing that initial, either like evaluation or underwriting, just to make sure the deal fits this specific criteria before you even take a look at it, because they can weed out so many things that are just a waste of time to look at. So we've had that. We have had them in our short-term rental stuff where they're messaging guests and setting up the properties and the pictures and the handbooks and all that kind of stuff. And then property management, they can do so much inside just the whole property management area. And then if you're doing admin tasks, email management, personal tasks, I have mine. Okay, let me back up for a second. The best way to figure out what they could do for you is to really look at your time. And the reason I'm saying that is I had them doing a lot of things in the business, but I still was bogged way down. I took the time to really analyze what I was doing each day. And I realized that when I was homeschooling, I was spending hours grading my kids' schoolwork. And so for me, handing that over to my VA, giving her, like putting my answer keys online, and she would just, my kids would slide their book under the camera. She would look through it and, grade it, and then let me know what areas they needed help with. That saved me hours. Whereas the little word tasks that I was giving her, yes, they were in the business, but they weren't as beneficial to me. And so I really like to tell people to look at your time as a holistic picture and not just looking at the business and ignoring maybe the elephant in the room that you just didn't think about because it wasn't in the business. So look at the big picture, and a lot of times you'll see things that you might not have noticed before.
Again, along the lines, of having a lot of real estate investors that are listeners to the podcast, what's your experience with or what's your biggest hang up with the 1031 exchange or capital gains tax deferral options?
Jessica, it's daunting. For me, it's overwhelming, and there's a big learning curve to it. It seems like, just something that's kind of overwhelming for me.
Yeah, and that's what we work with here at Capital Gains Tax Solutions, is helping people learn all that stuff, understand their options with the 1031 exchange, all the intricacies of that, whether it's even a good option for them. I'm a financial planner. I run my own business, landingfinancial.com, and I'm always working with people to help them understand their capital gains tax deferral options, because we do the deferred sales trust here, and it's really an option. It's an awesome option if it works for them. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you want to learn more, you're welcome to reach out to me. Again, I'm Jessica Lanning at landingfinancial.com. You can also go to the capitalgainstaxsolutions.com and mention that you heard this on the podcast, and we can talk more about your capital gains tax deferral options. Okay, Valerie, you ready for the lightning round?
Sure.
Okay, what's your favorite book that you've read or gifted in the past year?
I'm just going to go with the classic Think and Grow Rich. And it's because I'm reading it again. I've read it again. I've read it twice, and I'm on my third round. And I just feel like every time I read it, I pull more out of it, and it kind of brings to light things that I may have forgotten. So I'm going to go with the classic.
I love it. But I have to ask you, are you familiar with the book Who Not How?
I am. And I do love that one too.
Thought for sure that's the one that you were going to say. Okay. Favorite leadership quote or theme you strive to live by?
I guess the theme would be collaboration. I feel like a lot of times you think that you can do something yourself, and sometimes, we kind of covered it, that, you think that you're saving, but it's not really true. Being able to collaborate with others, work as a group, work with a partner, work with the team, you can go so much further. And that kind of goes back to the who, not how.
Okay, let's imagine you could go back in time. What would you tell your 20-year-old self?
I would same theme. I would say it's about the network that you surround yourself with. It's about the connections that you make. It's not necessarily just about working harder, because that's kind of what we were raised and what we kind of thought for years. Just work harder. And it's not. It's more on the connections that you're making, how you can build upon others, as well as, what you're able to do yourself.
What are you most curious about right now?
My husband and I are looking into business acquisitions. We're looking to acquire another company. And so I'm really excited about that. We're actually moving from Ohio to North Carolina. I'm in North Carolina right now. And that's why there's like absolute blah, blah background, is because we just rented the house, haven't had a chance to do anything to it yet. But I'm really curious about that aspect. And that's kind of what we're looking at right now.
So you've had a lot of great success in your career. What's one habit that you try to practice daily or weekly, which helps you stay centered in your values and keeps you moving forward towards new goals?
I'm a morning person. I'm a diehard morning person. So if I'm not up by 5, there's something wrong. And it's something that I'm so grateful that my dad instilled in us. When we were kids, we wanted horses, and he said to my sister and I, if you can get up at 5 a.m. for a year, I'll get you a horse. And we did. My older sister and I did. And I look back and I think it set me for life. Honestly, I can't sleep in. I'm just so used to it. And so grateful my dad did that when we were kids.
So this is not usually one of my lightning round questions, but I have a client that was diagnosed with Parkinson's at 53. So older than your husband, but still more or less early onset. And I'm curious as to how it's changed your lives. Like, how do you think about things now, and how do you think about the future?
Sure. That's a great question. It's been hard. I'm just going to be honest. It's been really hard. You don't plan for this kind of thing. And so there've been times where you just think, why? You're frustrated. But on the other hand, it put us on a path we would have never gone down. And so we're choosing to just look at it and say, hey, this could be the best thing that ever happened. you feel the pain, you feel the frustration, but you have to choose the way that you're going to look at it. And that's kind of what we've decided to do. We're looking at it as something that is driving us and pushing us down a road that we didn't even know, we didn't even really consider before. And so we are so grateful for that. And that's just kind of the way that we're choosing to look at the whole thing.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Listen, thank you so much for being on the show. I want to encourage you to keep using your gifts or strengths to be a help and a blessing to others. I love this who, not how, that you can find the who's. For those who want to get in touch with you, what's the best place for people to find you?
Sure. My email, Valerie@thestreamlineteam.com, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Hit me up. Love to chat.
Great. That wraps up the show. I want to thank you, the listener, for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. We believe that high net worth individuals and their professional teams shouldn't struggle to find great options for deferring capital gains taxes. Don't let your failure to plan become your plan to fail, especially when the deferred sales trust might be your very best way to exit your highly appreciated assets and defer the capital gains taxes so you can continue to grow your wealth. Please rate, review, and subscribe